and I met Jesus Christ. He was almost 10 years old, and he was helping his mother push a trolley full of all they owned. And because they couldn't find an inn they could get in, they were heading to the city and leaving Bethlehem. Couldn't you perform a miracle? I'm out of them, he said. I tried turning nothing into warmth, but it just made my mother cry. It just made my mother cry. Mary Magdalene has become a man, and tonight he's old, and she has been riding my tram. Now it's late and she's trying to sleep beneath the poster for a bank. Your dreams are important to us as it bathes her face in gold. Come give us your natural gifts, we make wealth from toil. Come pretend for history's page that we're advancing Australia fair. Let's pretend that we're all advancing Australia fair. Back down the road I found the church we built on the black man's bones was empty, and out the front a sign read all but sold. A sign read all but sold. And we all owe so much money, but to whom we're not quite sure. So head down, we just keep running along our fading golden shores. So head down, we just keep running along our fading golden shores. Come give us your natural gifts, we make wealth from toil. Come pretend for history's page that we're advancing Australia fair. Let's pretend that we're all advancing Australia fair.
Jonathan, how you going?
I'm good, Michael. How are you?
Welcome
Good to see
to
you.
Sunday morning. I think this is number 4. I'm not very good at keeping episode notes. So this
6
is
or 7 we've done so far. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, so 6
Yeah.
or 7. And today is one of my favorites. I love Alison. I think she's one of our greatest assets. So, would you like to introduce this?
Right. Alison Bevege is the founder, editor, runner of Letters from Australia on Substack. She's one of Australia's best-known independent journalists. She's been at the centre of numerous controversies over the years. She's been particularly strong during the COVID era, unveiling some of the absolute blatant corruption that we've seen in Australia between the government and pharmaceutical companies, ordering, a dozen vaccine shots for every single resident in Australia and that sort of thing. Men, women and children, just insane what happened in Australia, not to mention the lockdowns and so forth. So she was at the centre of all of that, and one of the best journalists writing on the topic for sure. She's also been a great critic of Islamic mass migration, or what she terms Islamic fascism, and that is along with the hate speech laws, two of the central arguments going on in Australia at this point in time. The Indian inundation, as it's called. Much of the Indian immigration is actually Hindu immigration, so we'll see what happens between the Hindus and the Muslims who've been fighting for some centuries, of course. One of the reasons the general public knows of Alison Bevege is because she sued Hizb ut-Tahrir over the gender segregation in their communities. And I must admit, it wasn't something that I particularly supported or agreed with myself. So Alison, come on, we can debate all these things. It's a good. She's a great credit to the independent media in Australia.
You seem to be frozen, John, but good morning, Alison.
Good morning, good morning. I can't believe you remember that. Like, I did see them, it was ages ago, but yes, I did. Oh, and you know how you were mentioning the COVID era? I've got a little pearl for you that I only just discovered. The government did an audit into the setting up of the Moderna factory in Melbourne. The audit's come out now. It turns out that that Moderna factory that pumps out a whole load more of the mRNA technology that just injured a whole load of people and didn't stop COVID transmission at all. Well, that factory in Melbourne didn't cost $2 billion. It cost $3 billion. So $3 billion of your tax.
$3 billion? I thought it was 200
billion
million.
With a B. No, it's $3 billion with a B. And not only that, there was a scoping study done into whether we should have it or not, because you have to provide one if you're going to be spending that much money. So I think it was commissioned by DISA, Department of Industry, Science, and I forget what the R stands for. But that cost them $2 million just for the scoping study from McKinsey. Just came out. Yeah, $2 million just for the scoping study.
How is this even possible?
And it's worse. It gets worse. Because when they did the procurement for this Moderna factory, it was done by DISA and also Department of Health. What they did was they set aside the procurement rules that government is supposed to go through when they procure, such a large contract. And DISA used a different set of rules, but Department of Health didn't specify any rules at all, and that is actually ongoing, which can affect future purchases under that thing. So,
do you believe
government audit officers come out with their report?
Let's wade into the deep end. Do you believe that Pfizer paid off Australian politicians? Was that why it was so frenzied, their desperate attempt to get the whole of Australia vaccinated? Was it that they were bribed? And was that why we didn't hold a royal commission? Because it's the only body in Australia that would be able to force now retired politicians, all the premiers fled very promptly, would be able to force that discovery. You don't think that they were bribed?
No, I don't think it's ever as crude as just bribing. It's never money in a brown paper bag.
No, consultancy fees.
They never need it. They never need to do that, because what they've done, it's bigger than that. What they've done is pharmaceutical companies. It's so large. Honestly, I feel like a little ant, and there's a huge elephant, and I'm the ant at the elephant's toe, and I'm trying to look up and see the whole elephant, but it's almost impossible. So what's happened basically is over time, these pharmaceutical companies that rake in more money than not even small nations, medium-sized nations, that have yearly revenues that are larger than, say, New Zealand, even Switzerland. Like, these companies have been so big for so long that what they've done is they've sort of integrated themselves with the centres of power. So they've taken a whole of society approach. They're integrating in with the US government, and they're integrating in with the bureaucracy. That's why you have compromised regulators. That's why the FDA is compromised, why a lot of ex-FDA heads then go and sit on Pfizer's board, why a lot of ex-people who were influential in the COVID response in Australia now write papers together with Moderna employees, or go and sit on the board of Medicines Australia, which is the lobby group for all the Class 1 big pharma companies. So they work like a cartel. They scratch each other's back. They don't necessarily get the benefit. Pfizer doesn't necessarily just act in the interest of Pfizer. It might act in the benefit of GSK, and then GSK might act in the benefit of Merck, and Merck might act in the benefit of Sanofi, but they all benefit as a whole. And they all try and integrate in with the regulators, with the bureaucracy, they do, and the universities especially, they use. So basically what we're looking at is a whole of society dysfunction. And when you've got such a thing like that, it fosters groupthink, which snowballs. So you'll have the politicians will be responding to pressures from their electorate and pressures from their advisors. They're just, I mean, look at Scott Morrison, Scotty from marketing. He's not a medical expert. If he's Prime Minister, he goes, all right, we've got this thing that looks big and scary. I don't know much about diseases. I'm not a virologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. It looks terrifying. I'm being told that this is a terrible threat. I need scientific advice. So he'll go to his scientific advisors. He'll go to the university experts and the medical experts that are, you know, there to advise government, and they will tell him what to do, and he'll go on his best advice. You've got a big problem when all those advisors are caught up in the funding and the groupthink that's being pushed, that always pushes one way. And so I think
many of which were appointed by Bill Gates and Gaffer and the rest of them are all strategically in place in Australia to perpetuate the narrative. Amazing.
Well, Gates is an interesting figure. There's been a lot written about Gates. As I see it, I mean, you know, I'm not an insider. I don't know him. I can't know what he's thinking. But what I can see from the way the Gates Foundation has acted is that it has absolutely billions and billions and billions of dollars of investment money. And then Gates, there were only two people who were the directors of the Gates Foundation for many, many years, and that was Gates and guess who? Guess who the other director was? Just have a guess.
Epstein.
No. Warren Buffett, the world's number one investor. Warren Buffett.
My Lord.
Yeah, so Warren Buffett, the investment genius. No, this is how it works. Gates Foundation gives billions and billions of dollars to lots of little foundations, lots of university programs. So he's always, you know, always seeding programs and funding things and building relationships and building other little NGOs. That he builds a constellation, an ecosystem of little organizations, and infiltrates, not as a person, but the ideas that he wants to promote, that his organization is there to promote. Those ideas get fostered and elevated and funded, and ideas that would harm what his objectives are get not funded and get sort of sidelined and marginalized. So if
always follow the money, as they say. So why exactly did Scott Morrison order, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, 12 shots for every single man, woman and child in Australia? Why did they do that? Why did they over order to the tune of billions of dollars?
Well, now now you've got to the very nub of the question. Why? And I just saw a very great YouTube video the other day where Dr. John Campbell was talking about the white clots, and he was just almost crying. He was going, why? Why? You can see the facts. Why won't you address this? That question of like, why? Why would you order so many shots of something that wasn't, at that time, had not yet finished its testing? Don't forget the phase 3 clinical trials went on for 2 years. They ended them at 2.5 months by vaxing up the control group, which destroys any safety data you can possibly get after 2.5 months. But the actual phase 3 trials were scheduled to go on for 2 years. While we were all taking them, they were provisionally authorized only. So they were still a provisional medication. So why would you do that? And I think now this is the issue. Actually, funnily enough, that's why that's why all of this is related. People think it's conspiracy theories, but I'm in the middle of trying to finish my own book on COVID that's taken me so long, and I never seem to get to the end of it. But I will finish one day. I swear I will. But I've been going and mapping out where did this idea come from to find out why. You have to pick to the origins and the roots of things. Why would you do that? Well, who was pushing it? Whose great idea was it? Where did it start? And it started in the US military. It started part of it started in DARPA. The US military for years, decades, had been wanting a rapid response platform to emerging infectious diseases. This doesn't have to be nefarious. I mean, their job is to protect the American military and the American people. So it can be from quite honourable motives that they were worried that if you send troops into a war zone, they might get something like Ebola, or there might be an outbreak of biological warfare agents from something or somewhere, that newly concocted virus that might be a devastating impact. And the virus will move so fast that we won't have time to actually produce a countermeasure for it. And so they started researching. They wanted a platform technology. And the platform technology that they landed on was mRNA or DNA. So DARPA for decades was researching mRNA and DNA as a platform technology. And the idea really appealed to all these tech bros. You can imagine, like Bill Gates, the OG tech bro. They love this idea because it's like computer code to their brain. They've got this, it's like a T-shaped.
It was like they were hacking DOS. The DOS of humans.
But the psychology of them is like a T-shaped expertise. I'm really great at computer code and I'm so great at making money that I see the world through this lens, and then I think I'm an expert at everything. And so he was funding stuff and DARPA was funding stuff, and they were all working as a team to get this thing through, which is they thought that if you get the thing through the vaccine approvals once, the mRNA platform once through the approvals process, which takes a long time and needs a lot of testing. And then whatever new virus comes along, someone just emails you the genetic sequence and you just plug the genetic sequence into this platform. And then you don't need any massive amounts of testing and you don't need to do all the things that you need for actual vaccine approvals. You can just shove it straight through with this new little thing added. And that's why they did the booster. They only tested it on 8 mice. So that was at least the thinking that you can see from the evidence. I like things that are evidence. So from the talk of people at DARPA, this is the kind of things that they were saying. We want rapid response. And I think in answer to why, I'm not a mind reader, I'm not in the cabinet meetings. We won't know for 25 years for sure why. But from what I've seen, this is just my opinion, my supposition, and what I'll write in my book. My argument, or thought at least, is why they did that is because the Americans were pushing this through the Five Eyes Alliance nations and the NATO alliance nations, and they wanted to ram it through the medical regulatory system, and it needed to go through everywhere all at once, because if you had a major developed country like Australia or the UK and they didn't do it, then the people in America would not want to take this brand new GMO technology, because people don't even like GMO foods, let alone injected into their bodies. This is repurposed gene therapy technology, let's remember. So if people did it in America and they didn't do it in the UK or Australia, then the people who were opposed to it inside America or inside those other countries would argue against it, and maybe the whole thing would fall apart and they wouldn't get the thing that they wanted. So they had to ram it through everywhere all at once. And I think it wasn't just about money, it was about that. But money was part of it too. When you're making money off something and you're getting...
This is why they had the issue with Sweden. Was it Sweden that said no?
Sweden didn't say no. What Sweden did was say no to lockdown. Sweden still took the jab, but they
all took it. I've interviewed the Swedes. They still had huge numbers, 90% or more. Yeah,
they still took it. It was the lockdown. But you see, the lockdowns is part of the behavioural psychology. The lockdowns were never needed, but the lockdowns are part of behavioural psychology, because you can't panic the people. It's like this. If a virus is not really a big cost or a big threat to the government, people will sit around and say, oh, well, we don't really need to spend much money on that and we don't really need to do it. But if you make out like a virus is so dangerous and the whole society has to lock down, then everyone will go, oh my God, this is like flying Ebola. We all have to change our behavior. And yes, it's okay to give hundreds of billions of dollars to these companies. Yes, we'll comply with everything. And this again, some of the people connected with the US military were involved, and the medical industrial complex from America were involved in an earlier episode when there was a swine flu pandemic in 2009.
Yep.
And that was a dry run, if you like, of lockdowns. They had unnecessary lockdowns stemming from Mexico, and it frightened the governments because the lockdowns cost the government a lot of money. So then you've got the risk-benefit analysis. The government is sitting there saying, well, lockdowns cost me billions of dollars. In that case, it's a good investment decision to give billions of dollars to Bill Gates and his friends for pandemics, because cost-benefit analysis in the long run, it's cheaper than lockdowns. You see, if the lockdowns were never necessary in the first place, they'd never be giving the hundreds of billions of dollars to Gavi and COVAX and Gates Foundation and all the rest of the massive apparatus, this massive pandemic ecosystem that's now built up around it.
Can I ask my question first? Why Why? I'm hearing what you're saying. The lockdowns is how they got the people to take it, frighten them. You're not going to get out of this unless you take it. But why do you think, from your opinion, were they so determined that so many people took this vaccine? Because Liz Gunn and Andrew Brigden, I think Andrew Brigden's got an FOI from, we're doing a story about it tonight, from the Health Minister of New Zealand, where he did a memorandum of understanding to all the ministers, including Ardern, that COVID wasn't particularly dangerous nor that transmissible.
Mm.
This is before everything. So
Yeah,
why
again,
were they
this
so
is
determined to get this vaccine into us?
into every arm. Again, that's another why question that's really crucial to answer. And again, I'm not a mind reader. We can't
Yeah.
ever really, this might be one of those things where you can never know unless they say it, because there's a lot of things that could fit the evidence and we don't really know. But I would say one thing that could contribute to it would be simple behavioral psychology. There's a human bias that once you've taken something, you in your mind think that I've sort of chosen to take it and now I've done it. It's not that bad since I've already done it. Also, I've chosen to take it. I've allowed them to give it to me. So therefore, you have a heuristic bias that says things that I have chosen to do must be okay, because otherwise, if you think I've done bad things, you come across cognitive dissonance and you feel bad. It's hard for you. So your brain naturally defaults to a state where the things I've done are okay and right. So if you've actually already taken the product yourself, you're much less likely to fight against it. And because they wanted it to come in as a platform technology for the next 25 years, they want you to accept it as a platform for the whole future technology. I know a lot of people
Kerry
say,
Chan said, because Kerry Chan said you're going to be taking these every 3 months for the rest of your life.
well, it's not just the COVID
That's what she
vaccine,
said.
it's every other technology as well. It's every
Yeah,
other
that's right.
flu vaccine and other vaccine. And they're inventing a whole new, that like a few years ago, the pharmaceutical companies decided that they'd already loaded up the kids too much. And so now the new big market was going to be adult vaccines. And so they started lobbying the government for adult vaccine funding. Because of course, all the funding comes from you and me, the taxpayer, mostly for the pharmaceutical industry. They're the biggest pirates there are. So now they're pushing adult vaccines, and it's their new big target market is adult vaccines, and you can just see it. I mean, let me tell you this. I don't know if you saw this one on my Substack. It was the last Substack I did, which was about misinformation about the whooping cough vaccine published everywhere by the Sydney Morning Herald, because they're trying to push vaccines to adults. The big thing now that they're doing is telling you as an adult that you're a dangerous threat. You're a terrible, dangerous disease spreader. You are a baby killer. That Sydney Morning Herald literally had this a lady called Catherine Hughes as the feature introduction to the story, saying that basically unvaccinated people spread whooping cough. If only people had taken the whooping cough vaccine, my baby would still be alive. Her baby died of whooping cough. And Sydney Morning Herald has then taken up this as a cause celebre, saying adults who don't have the whooping cough vaccine are in danger of spreading the disease to vulnerable babies who are too young to have it, and then they will die of whooping cough. So effectively a baby killer. And they repeated this not just in the story, but in an editorial a few days later. Now, I've written a Substack on that and put a complaint in myself to the Press Council about it. And I'm aware that ANTS has also put in a complaint to the newspaper about this, because as you might know, the pertussis vaccines in Australia, the acellular pertussis vaccines, have never been able to stop transmission of whooping cough. So unvaccinated people and vaccinated people can both spread whooping cough to vulnerable young babies. It's not unvaccinated people who are the baby killers. It's not. And in fact, they're causing a public health problem by giving vaccinated people a false sense of security, so that if they have mild symptoms, they won't even entertain the thought that they could have whooping cough. They'll just think it's a minor cold, and they'll go and handle that vulnerable young baby and possibly pass the disease on to them, because the newspaper has got the wrong idea in its head that the vaccines stop transmission when they don't. But
so
this
lying
is
about
marketing to adults.
Yeah.
So lying about public health issues, is that just corporate greed, or is there a kind of malevolence behind it, as in they're trying to make the general public easy to manipulate, easy to influence and to comply, so that you have mass populations complying with particular orders that could come through anything, the phones, the TV, anything? Does it make people more susceptible to propaganda and indoctrination?
Well, as to whether it's they're deliberately doing it, from the Sydney Morning Herald's perspective, no, they're genuinely ignorant. Because what happens is we see the world through our biases and our assumptions. And the problem is if you get an assumption that's wrong, deeply embedded into your brain. So, for example, the assumption that vaccines are always safe and effective as a category. So anything called vaccine must, by definition, be safe and effective and must, by definition, prevent disease. So they've just got this bias and this assumption in their head. They're not seeing them as individual medical products, that you actually have to do the harder work and the longer work of looking at this product and what does it do and what can't it do. So for the acellular pertussis vaccine, they can reduce disease severity, and that's a great thing. That might save your life if you're a child. That might be great, but they can't prevent transmission. The Sydney Morning Herald journalists and editorial, they've got it in their head that vaccine stops disease. And the health department puts out very vaguely worded advice on it and says, because they want to encourage people to take those adult vaccines, because they've bought the product, it looks bad on them if people stop taking it, then the government is seen to have wasted money. So it's in their interest to have everybody think that they're doing a good job. So they want to encourage everybody to take the product they've bought. It must be good because we've made the decision to buy it and spread it to everyone. So therefore, they word their advice in a very easy to misunderstand way. Like in the official government advice in the vaccines handbook, it will say things like the vaccines, unvaccinated people can spread the disease. You know, that's paraphrasing. It words to the effect of unvaccinated people can be a danger because they can spread the disease. But it's also true that vaccinated people can be a danger and spread the disease, but they just leave that out.
They leave that out.
So half telling it means that when the Sydney Morning Herald goes to read it and they read, oh, protect your baby by vaccinating, unvaccinated people can spread the disease, they themselves make the false leap to the idea that means that you stop spreading it if you're vaccinated. But in fact, the health department never said that. They carefully worded around that.
Can I just say there, I have been meeting loads of people that's happened to. Loads of grandparents who can't see their grandkids because they won't take the whooping cough vaccine. Loads. And these people now in our community go, oh, well, no, I don't see my grandkids. Some haven't seen it for 3 years.
Yeah,
and I know several people watching the show and they're saying, when can you go? And he goes, I'm not taking it. But they're saying exactly this,
The drug companies are actually quite cynical. They know it's their profits for adults to take that vaccine, so they're happy to promote that horrible division within families, that heartbreaking, I mean, that just tears families apart. Can you imagine?
Yes, it does.
You know, grandparents who can't hold their child, like it just destroys families.
Not even hold it, not even see it.
Not even see it. GSK ran an ad campaign a couple of years ago in America with a big bad wolf from Red Riding Hood. It was the grandmother, and then the grandmother was reflected in the eye of the little baby as the big bad wolf. You know, the dangerous, this lovely grandmother that wants to pick up her baby is actually the dangerous wolf that's going to kill the baby. So I think the drug companies are well aware of what they are doing, but they stop short of saying it. But they are, they give the impression and they constantly harp on it so that everybody's assumptions are built in so strongly.
So is the motivation money or population control at the end of the day?
Well, I think you'd have to ask them and they'd have to say, but I think from the evidence, all I can say from the evidence is that they make a lot of money out of the adult vaccines and they see it as a growth market. And that's what they've been lobbying the government for that you can actually see. They've asked the government to promote adult vaccines as, you know, a great way to protect the community, which is actually also a great way for them to grow profits.
So you're, Alison, unusual in the independent journalist realm, the booming area of independent media in Australia. It's just going right off the charts. So, as people lose faith in traditional media. So can you just talk a little bit about, working for Reuters and News Limited? We both worked for News Limited and how that shaped your views today. What impressions you got out of working for News Limited, Reuters in particular, you know,
Okay.
corporate monstrosities, if you like.
I loved working for News Limited. I worked for the
Yeah.
Northern Territory News for
Yeah.
roughly 10 years off and on. And so it was great. I loved it so much. It was just fantastic.
Northern Territory. She lived in Darwin or Alice?
Darwin.
Where's your tan?
Say again.
Where's your tan?
Oh, my tan. No, you don't. Because it's so hot, you just hide in the air conditioning. And you come out at night. That's what you're doing, Darwin.
Well, that, can I say, just as a segue, I saw something the other day. Australians now literally don't go into the sun much, and we've got sunscreen, and yet melanomas are through the roof. Where previously in the 70s, when we were out there in the sun, or 60s and 50s, melanomas were down, we were in the sun. So it's just an interesting quote saying that the sun might not actually be anything to do with melanomas.
Well, I mean, that could be possible, but don't forget the magnetosphere has changed since the 70s, and it's weakened quite dramatically. But you know, the South Pole and the North Pole are shifting. Well, it's not just that they're shifting, the magnetosphere of the Earth is weakening, and that lets in a lot more of the solar radiation. And don't forget also we had the hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica. It's not a hole like you would punch through fabric. It's just ozone depleted air, and the air currents come up across Australia. So basically we get ozone depleted air currents, and then a lot more UV radiation comes through, and that's also increased since the 70s. So it could be a lot of things. So I'm not sure, but it's true that sunscreens do have a lot of nasty chemicals in them and endocrine disruptors, but they do block UV damage. Like UV radiation isn't to be sneezed at. But you can make your own sunscreen. You just get shea butter, coconut oil, olive oil, and get food grade zinc, because zinc is what is in sunscreens, and you mix them together. There's plenty of recipes, and you can use your own homemade sunscreen.
I love how the segue just goes gone, and now we're talking about homemade
Sorry.
sunscreen. Sorry, get you back to what you were talking about before I brought that up.
So working in the mainstream media didn't make you a terrible cynic, huh? I was amazed by the behaviour of my former colleagues during the whole COVID era. You know what I'm saying? Some of the smartest people on earth don't agree with lockdowns and vaccine mandates, but they all knew better than humble old me and humble old, I can never pronounce his name, Jay Bhattacharya and all the rest of them.
Yeah. I left NT News in 2014, not because I wanted to, but because I was forced to come to Sydney due to family business. But after that, for a whole, to the pandemic, I wasn't working full time. I was working as a casual at Daily Mail, but I was working 4 shifts a week, so I was almost full time. And here I was just stringing for Reuters on weekends for a short time, so that wasn't a huge part of my life. It was more News Limited and then Daily Mail, the bulk of it. So News Limited, I was taught very good lessons. There was on the wall there was a sign, and it said, "Is it true? Is it fair? Is it accurate?" And I would look at that, and I would think about it, and I would really imbibe it. And we had people that really did their best every day, and no one ever said to you, "You can't do this story because this." If it was a good story and it was true, fair, and accurate, you could do it. So that was 2014. I left there. So I don't know what it was like in that newsroom since then. But obviously, in every newsroom, you have fights and different disagreements and different opinions. But people really did strive towards that as an ideal there. In Daily Mail, it was a bit more patchy, but people did still take their job seriously. But it was a whole different business model. Like the business model at Daily Mail is basically there's a room full of 20-year-olds and a couple of other journalists, and it's a cost-cutting model. Like they give you the headlines of stories from other news agencies, and then you have to sort of recreate the story, but with other sources and embellish it from different sources so that it's a news story, and then you're not just plagiarizing the whole thing, and then just quickly put it out. And that's how they get around that. And then a couple of journalists do independent journalism, like actual journalism from finding the story themselves. So it's kind of like this hybrid model of summarizing the news and reinventing it, plus a few of people doing their own independent journalism. But I was in Daily Mail newsroom as COVID began, and you will have all seen poor old Buckley. But when Barclay came out and told everybody to make fun of the anti-vaxxers, and I defended him on your podcast because I said it's not, he thought he was doing the right thing. Like, this is another example of these assumptions that get baked into people's thinking. His assumption baked in over many, many years is that those anti-vaxxers are crazy and stupid and they're a threat to public health, and that people will die if I don't make sure that their voice isn't amplified over my media and given the imprimatur of being authoritative by appearing in my news. So therefore, he thought he was doing the right thing, and he wasn't alone. They were all doing that, all of them. They were all participating in that, and not because they were being paid money, not because they were being told by their bosses, although perhaps they were. I wouldn't know. I'm at too low a level, but because they all are true believers in that vaccine mythology. And they didn't understand really what it meant that these were repurposed gene therapies and entirely different to anything else. They were just badged vaccines. And so, they all got called conspiracy theorists. And I'm sorry, my camera appears to be back to front. It says conspiracy nation.
No, it works on us, Conspiracy Nation. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I've never read that book.
Conspiracy theorists. No, there's two books I wanted to read from. This is Goodbye Road, which is a fantastic read, written by Michael Gray Griffith.
And edited by John.
And edited by John Stapleton. Beautifully edited, I might add. It's a lovely editing.
Have you got the version with the Australia's Broken Heartlands at the bottom on the cover? No, that's the earlier version.
No. This one I got from Amazon. But it doesn't have that.
So they're still printing the old version, Michael.
Yeah, I've changed it up. I've put it up there. I've done it up, so I don't know what to do. I've put everything up there. So
strange.
I'm doing a check today. Yeah.
And actually, while we're talking about books, don't forget there's also this book. Don't forget this book by Professor Robert Clancy, which factually does go through a lot of the different experiences of the COVID era. Okay.
So which one do you want to talk about first?
So people don't forget. There's also that book.
So which one would you like to talk about?
Can we do the Conspiracy Nation?
Because
I just got a quote from there. From that, this is astounding. I'll just read it out.
Oh, wait. Make sure it's not from the academic study. There's a quote, the book, might be from the academic study, the one I sent you.
Yeah, it's from the PDF you sent me to look at. But it's just this thing where they're putting us down. I just thought this was really interesting because a refrain repeated through the freedom movement was the idea that the others' fear of COVID-19 had rendered them sheeple. This term was employed to simplify the herd-like mentality supposedly exhibited by those who supported COVID-19 countermeasures. Sheeple were said to be in such fear of the virus that they had become docile and lacking the freedom required for individual thought. And I was thinking, that's exactly what I think. You nailed it. I'll put it in the banner so you can see it. But it's it's just interesting to see.
I forget this quote. Yeah, show me that one because I forget that quote. I forget that one. The top of my mind was the one where they were calling us all racist.
Yeah. So
why
racist? I'll have to do it in 2 bits.
Why racist?
I think that's why I wanted to go through these two books so we can remember what it really was like. The spirit of it.
But I just think it's interesting how they're doing it, how they're. Oh, it won't come through now. Bloody, it won't come through now. So there's.
So, Alison, you wanted to talk about something from Michael's book.
Actually, I don't know if there's enough time or if people would have the patience if you thought it would.
I think it's a good idea. Read that section you were talking about.
Yeah, I wanted to read a little bit from each one.
Yeah,
like maybe I'll start with a good. I wanted to read a little bit from Michael Gray Griffith's book because I love how this book has lots of little vignettes of stories from the time. It just brings you back to how it really was. And I wanted to read just a little bit from the Siege of the Shrine.
Yeah.
The Siege of the Shrine. Siege
Yeah.
of the Shrine was a really significant period of Australian history and a really significant
Yeah, well, this
event in
was. Look, I've
Australian
got this
history.
incredible photo here that I got threatened by a French company for hundreds of thousands of dollars. They were going to constantly badgering me to take this photo down. It's because I had it online. I wouldn't take it down. This was the photo. And so that's us here. This is us, and that's the, so to me, this was old Australia where we thought we had freedoms, and this is the new Australia, the police with all their stormtrooping gear, going basically, no, you don't. If you don't do what we say, we don't care about your symbolism. We're just going to hurt you. Because all day we were there, they kept coming up and saying, "Listen, you guys don't move. We're going to start shooting you." They must have said that about 3 or 4 times. The head of the police, and we didn't believe him, even though we had already had been shot. Because it was the Shrine of Remembrance. You're not going to shoot freedom fighters on the Shrine of Remembrance, but they did.
Again, you see, because this is what we know, what we were familiar with. This is our culture. We wouldn't have expected them to do that.
That's right.
It's our assumption, and we didn't
Yeah,
realize.
would you like to read that section that you want to read?
Yeah, just a little bit. I was going to read like a little paragraph from the because it comes up twice in Michael's book. I'll just do a little bit that I didn't email from the earlier bit. At the shrine, whatever the case was, we knew as we sat on the hallowed steps of the shrine that we finally had, as powerless people, a little bit of power. For as the police encircled us, it was clear to both sides that despite all the weapons and armour, they had a problem. Their soul. The mass media were on their side. We knew they couldn't find a way to shoot us here, like they'd been shooting us in the city streets all morning, all while remaining the good guys in black stormtrooper uniforms. But despite us being heavily outnumbered, the standoff began with the shrine as our only protection. It was a moment none of us saw coming, when we, looking like a group of Aussies at the cricket, were momentarily free, and the police were pondering what to do. Okay, there's a little bit from there, and a little bit from what Real Rukshan, who I think is one of the finest journalists in Australia. I'm a big fan of Real Rukshan and Avi Yemeni. I think they're absolutely brave and just
me too.
So here we go. Real Rukshan was there, risking his body, videoing it. And he goes, this lovely photo that you posted, I think this is really important. In the morning, the streets of Melbourne were being patrolled by armoured cars called Bearcats.
Yeah, I've got it here, Alison.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, there. Yeah.
So one of these guys
armoured
shot me.
cars called Bearcats. In the morning, the streets of Melbourne were patrolled by armoured cars called Bearcats. Victorian police officers were hanging off these vehicles, many holding rubber bullet rifles and firing indiscriminately as those they assumed were protesters. A dramatic picture Real Rukshan took, he says I took, that's Real Rukshan, a dramatic picture I took of stormtrooper-style police with a military tank in the background confronting protesters should have been published in a major newspaper with the headline, "Is this weapon really required to police protesting Australians?" They all refused to publish it. I believe this is because the image does not fit the perception most people have of Australia. It's like a piece that somehow got into the frame but is actually from a North Korean jigsaw puzzle, a piece we want to hide and forget. But the shooting went deeper. Not only were the Victorian police shooting fleeing protesters, let's not forget they were shot in the back as they ran away in panic, like not realising that that's what would have happened. Not only were the Victorian police shooting fleeing protesters, but they were shooting at them as they were protesting at the Shrine of Remembrance, a building built to commemorate those who fought and died in the belief they were protecting our freedom. And what were the protesters protesting about? Black Lives Matter? No, that protest had happened only weeks before, with Victorian police officers dropping to their knees and pledging to restrain themselves in future. No, these protesters were defending what they believed were our enshrined freedoms. The only reason they were there was because politicians wouldn't acknowledge their concerns, mainstream media wouldn't publish them, and for the first time in our internet history, social media was actively censoring them. So because we lived in a democracy where the Deputy Police Commissioner was quoted saying that protesting isn't against the law, they were on the streets airing their grievances. And, you know, this is what it was like then. This is what it was like. So that's how I remember it as well.
Well, that photo here,
Yeah.
that's from a video I took. So I was filming over my shoulder, and
Wow.
they were shooting us. And it's only when I got home and I looked at the video that I realized I had the video. So I've got the video of the thing turning up, and the people are running for their lives.
Mhm,
And
mhm, mhm,
they didn't stop us to arrest that gorilla there.
mhm,
Uh, he leapt on a guy next to me, a young guy, and smashed his face into the ground. And I thought,
mhm,
oh well,
mhm,
I'm next.
mhm,
And it was brutality on a level I couldn't. You were
couldn't
struggling to
understand.
conceive that it was Australia you were in at the time. It was
Mhm,
like a Black Mirror
mhm.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it was like crazy town. It's like we'd woken up in another universe. It was
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
amazing the
astonishing.
whitewashing from the mainstream media. Both of
Wow.
amazing, just
Oh, there was
amazing.
even there, to be
Okay,
honest, there was a Channel 9 or one of those was doing a live. So that armored vehicle was down the street. We could all see it. We just escaped from it. I had injuries, so I could show them I'd been shot. And they were still shooting people, grandmothers, everyone just shooting, going crazy. And I was begging the cameraman and the news reporter, film it, film it. They're shooting the
Mhm,
kids. I was going, they're
mhm,
shooting your children. And she was just shaking there, and she wouldn't, and had a mask on, and he had tears in his eyes, and they wouldn't film it. It was a Pulitzer Prize winning shot. It would be, it'd be in museums forever, this incredible shot.
mhm,
And they wouldn't
mhm,
do it. And then that night they went home, and we were right winged
mhm.
Nazis and
All
whatever you
right.
want. So
Well,
that's why I
interesting.
really got into Cafe
Yeah,
Lockdown. But okay, journalism is dead.
yeah.
So that's why I started going really hard.
Well, you'd think 5 years later we could have some honest discussion about these things,
Yeah.
but you know what? You're still going to be far right, and not only that, you're going to be neo-Nazi, and not only that, you're going to be white supremacist. And part of the reason why that's the case is because we have this book that's come out just last year called Conspiracy Nation, in which there are two journalists. One is Ariel Bogle, she writes for Guardian Australia, and the other is Cam Wilson. He is the associate editor of Crikey.com and also writes often for ABC and used to work for ABC and thus has a lot of ties inside the ABC. And so they've written this book, and they're touring now doing their book talks. And there's a chapter on freedom fighters which discusses the Shrine of Remembrance. So I'd like to just read a little bit from chapter 2, if I may. They first introduced the COVID freedom movement by discussing an Australian Institute of Crime study that is done on people who protest against authority, sort of framing it before they introduce it as being, predominantly male, often religious. They often had some problem in their life, so they question authority more. And so they frame it like that. They sort of approach it coming from the idea that you're really something to be studied under the magnifying glass as people who don't like authority. And then they progress to,
Oh man.
then they progress to the anti-authority protesters are much more likely to endorse conspiracy beliefs and to think that COVID-19 was intentionally released, or big events like wars and elections are orchestrated by small groups working against the people, and these secret societies control the world. So then they introduce the idea that you're pretty much conspiracy theorists. So then we come to the Shrine of Remembrance. In late September 2021, a march cut its way through central Melbourne before descending upon the city's Shrine of Remembrance. Melbourne was in the middle of its sixth lockdown, 2 long years into the pandemic. On the same day as the protest, there were 628 COVID cases and 3 deaths announced, bringing the country to 1,186 COVID deaths. Now, let me just tell you, 2,500 people die every week of old age. The whole of COVID to that point, there was 1,186 COVID deaths. And let's be real, most of them were very elderly people that were about to die. Like, something takes you out when you're 95.
Yeah, they had one morning.
You're
You know how the
COVID death.
Premier used to get on? One morning, I remember in Melbourne, this woman got on and said about the deaths from COVID. last night. She had as an 80-year-old, a 90-year-old, and she said an 101-year-old. And she said, like, we lost a 101-year-old. And I was looking and thinking, oh, that's a shame, because she just met a fella. She's wanting to pump out a couple of kids, take out another mortgage, and go back to uni and study something. She's 101 years old, mate. You know?
We're not saying, to be clear, because this is what the morality that these guys think.
Yeah.
To be clear, we're not saying old people are worthless and should just die and that we don't need to protect them. That's not
No,
what we're
but
saying.
they do die.
What we're saying is that we are mortal, and when you die of something. Something knocks you off the perch. Like, you will break your hip and then you will die, or you will catch a cold and then you will die. But it's not like if you didn't catch the cold, you would live forever. You won't. It was that final little nudge that pushes you off. And that's why COVID death was very dishonest when the government didn't release the ages of the people who were dying. But then they made it seem like the whole working age population was at risk when they weren't.
I'll
But anyway,
do a quick segue just to add some humour to this, because I used to work in nursing homes and I was trying to be a playwright early on. And I used to have this joke that was saying you'd see them like on ER, one of those shows, ER, and they go, oh, Mr. Waltz in room 17 is flatlining. Quick! And they're all running like crazy to get down there to save his life. Now, in a nursing home, we're sitting there out in the staff room, either smoking out the back with our coffees, and they come out and they go, I think Mr. Wilson in room 16 might be having a heart attack. And you're going, I'm on a break, mate. Maybe that's how it was. You were there to fucking die. I'm sorry, but that was on the contract. Must die. It's always there wasn't the fear, and in the winter, people died. They had these huge things.
Yeah.
I remember going up in one person died. I had to go down. It was like a 6-story nursing home, and I'm going down the lift. And when I was coming back up, like 5 minutes later, there's an undertaker there. I said, "You here already?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What, you like tow truck drivers now? You just wait here the call and you're shooting in to get the body?" And he said, "No, mate, you got another one died on this, another one below." So this was winter. People died in nursing homes. We don't talk about it because we hide away. But this was it. This was nothing unusual. You know, the only thing unusual was when they started injecting the people with COVID, with the COVID shots. And then when I was on the road, people were coming up to me constantly, nursing home workers, terrified, going, they've come in, they've given everyone the shot. We've lost like 20 people this month. It never happens. It's usually 1 or 2 a week. But they were just dying like crazy. And no one covered that story.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I've read that. I've put that in my book because it was in what someone said almost exactly that in the submissions to the COVID-19 inquiry. The one where they took all the submissions off the internet so you couldn't look at them for months, and then they said that they were on Trove, and then you went to Trove to try to find them and you couldn't find them. Thank God there was a guy on Substack who had downloaded them all and saved them. I got them all off Substack, and then I kept asking them for it, and they said, "Oh no, we've put them back up. They were back up again all of a sudden." And then now lately I went and they're down again. They don't want people to see it. They're trying to make it hard for people to see what went on. But anyway, that was a very interesting story. Let me just continue. So here you are marching to the Shrine of Remembrance on the same day as people died, you heartless bastards. And Premier Andrew announced that some 90,000 people had been vaccinated the day before. Hurrah! Hurrah for Premier Andrew. 90,000 people had been vaccinated. Anyway, sorry, I should stop.
And the average age of death was the average age of a COVID death was higher than the average mortality rate in Australia.
Yeah, you had more.
Amazing.
Exactly. It was. That's right.
So do you want to switch, because we're going, time limited. Do you want to switch to the other great controversy?
No,
Australia will stick to COVID.
I need to finish this one because you don't understand. You're not just being inhuman. You're not just being. It's not just that it didn't age well, that it's in there. It's the fact that you're being called Nazis now. It's the fact. Okay, so they go on blah, 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 Shrine of Remembrance. The next day, the Shrine of Remembrance chief executive told breakfast television show Sunrise that protesters had urinated and left trash behind. He said the comparison of the gathering's protest to the Anzac commemorated at the memorial was a perversion. By now, the group had officially adopted the freedom movement as their name. Their sign said freedom. Their chant said freedom. But what is freedom? They go on to the next thing. What is, no, we have no national bill of rights, blah, blah, blah. Throughout Australia's history, people who say that they're for freedom are an assortment of fringe groups. Some of them promote anti-Semitism.
And I just back in because that's a lie. I was there, right? Now, I'll tell you why that's a lie. There was a guy, he's employed, he's called Paul, he's got a bald head. He broke the story. I saw him in the street and went up to him. Kelly filmed me and said, mate, you're the one that told the story that we were all urinating on the shrine. And I said, so you physically saw that? He went, no. So I said, so how did you know? And he goes, oh, the CEO, the RSL, the CEO said it. And I was saying, well, there was like 100 professional photographers there because they knew it was history trying to photograph something. You had hundreds of cops there, all with body cams. You had special teams of police that were filming everything. We all had cameras and were filming everything. We had Rookshon and all these streamers streaming everything. Don't you think if one of them had captured an image of someone urinating, they would have gone global with it? It would have been like, wow, here we finally got it. So no one captured that image. The only image they had, and we proved this because we got the 2 shots somewhere, was of a horse that did a urination with the shrine remembrance behind it, and the cops looking down at the water at the wee. And it was an enormous wee. And I said, if one of the protesters had got in front of all of these heavily armed police officers, took out his knackers, done a wee that big, he deserves a shrine to himself because the ball's on the bastard. So then no one did it. They didn't have the evidence. And then I said to him, well, why didn't you cover the shooting? He goes, I didn't see it. I go, oh, you didn't see the shooting that happened in front of all of us.
Fleeing and running and getting shot in the back.
Yeah, you didn't see the shooting.
Didn't see that.
And you didn't see the urination and you didn't see the shooting, but you thought you'd go with the shooting. Fortunately, we had a journalist, Rookshon, there, and he captured the shooting.
But
and that was it. Yeah.
that was it.
So no one did it. There was so much respect there for the protesters, for the shrine itself.
But you see how the demonization works. All it takes is for the boss, the CEO, to say that, and it's not true. Maybe he honestly doesn't know it's true. Maybe he toured the site and saw the horse wee and thought it was and was told by someone else that it was a person.
They said they had it on CCTV. That's what they claimed. And I said, well, why don't they show it? Everyone want to see it. You win your case. Why not show it? But they never did. So the RSL, the CEO of the RSL, allegedly was lying.
Yeah. Well, even if I granted them that on the CCTV there was one person who did that, who knows, maybe it was a person who had a bladder dysfunction and couldn't help it or something like that. Even if there was one person, it's not representative of the movement at all, who revere the shrine. That's why they were there. They revere the shrine. But that gets amplified and published everywhere so that the 25 million people who were not at the shrine all think that of you because they weren't there to know any different and their authoritative sources say this. So they're now repeating that claim. And then they're moving on to other groups that claim freedom, anti-Semitic, the International Jew, Truth of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And then we go another group that's not related to anyone, white supremacists, anti-vaxxers, anti-Semites, opposers of First Nation land rights, Port Arthurs, all rub shoulders at some other group that's not related to anyone no one's ever heard of. And then they go on and on in that vein, and they bring up a specific quote from an academic article, and their specific quote was,
it's amazing these people call themselves journalists. They
reference,
that's amazing.
Actually, I will tell you.
How do you feel about that, John? I mean, you've been a journalist for so long. When you see this biased, what do you feel like?
Just disbelief. It's disbelief. I just can't believe the behaviour to this day of many people who accept the official narrative. You know that. It just amazes me that these people, they were the most progressive, the most intelligent people of their generation, I always thought, and I always looked up to them. And then you look at this and think they're all collaborating in this terrible lie. They've
Well,
fooled themselves. They're
oh,
fooling people that listen to them. Sorry,
it's
Alison.
worse. It's worse. I'm sorry to interrupt, John, but I know time is short and I'm desperate to tell you this because this is what's happening. You're all being reframed as racists and white supremacists. So here, I'll give you the exact quote from the book. It is this. Freedom movement figures started calling public health orders health fascism. Every public health order, every politician's social media post, and every person who followed the rules was a sign of something greater and more insidious. Often these accusations were racially coded, blaming specific groups such as Chinese or Muslim people for importing and spreading the virus. And for that paragraph, they've got reference 21 to a academic paper by University of Melbourne researchers Liam Gillespie and Saha Chunkor from June 2024 that looks at the Freedom Convoy for COVID in 2022. So not just the Shrine, but also the Freedom Convoy, the Truckers Convoy to Canberra. And what these two academics say in their paper, which is what Ms. Bogle and Mr. Wilson reference for their assertion that we were motivated by racism. Okay, this is from their academic paper, Gillespie and Chunkor, June 2024. They say the Truckers Convoy movement, the freedom movement, was highlighting its links with white supremacist conspiracy theories, such as QAnon and the Great Replacement theory. We argue these conspiracies were used to frame COVID-19 countermeasures as a continuation of a perceived trend towards a deliberate erosion of freedom as being white freedom. We argue the movement provided its members a pathway towards jouissance, which is a word that means intense joy from suffering. So a pathway towards intense joy from suffering that allowed fear to be performatively refused in the name of freedom. This, we argue, allowed members to embody their imagined status as exalted subjects of the white nation. These movements were composed largely of supporters of far-right groups, ethnic nationalists, white supremacists, and adherents to various COVID-related conspiracy theories. So that's what they're doing. These academics from Melbourne are reframing the freedom movement as racist, and then Ariel Bogle and Cam Wilson have picked up that idea in their book, and they're now touring the nation telling everybody basically that conspiracy theorists are heavily linked to neo-Nazis. It's like, where's Wally for neo-Nazism? In every chapter, there's a neo-Nazi somehow like shoehorned into the argument. And
we had,
of course,
can I just say, we were dealing with this in Melbourne at the time, Damien and I came up with the idea. I said, let's go with it. Let's say, listen, we've heard about this, we've heard this theory, so we're deep in the movement. And so we said, to our shock, we have found out that you're right. And we have tonight the leader of the white supremacist movement coming on the show. And we didn't say who it was, but when it came on, it was Rukshan. And so we had Rukshan on as this. But then we went even better. Rukshan was hilarious. I should dig out the show. He was piss farting around, laughing like crazy. And then we kept going. We said, look, now seriously. We said we bring on the white supremacist leader, so let's do it. And then we brought on Jerry. Now, Jerry was African. He was as black as pitch. He made Rukshan look like an albino. And he comes up and says, yes, I'm the leader of the white. And he was a speaker. He's one of the speakers at the movement. It was a hilarious piss take show. And it was so effing funny. And they were saying, yeah. So he's saying, yeah, I'm a Nazi. You know?
What annoys me is that it's all taxpayer money. They're all government funded, those people that are peddling this BS around the country. It's all bullshit. They must know it's bullshit. Surely these people, they're not that dumb. They must know that they're peddling, ideological nonsense.
Or are they believers?
Well,
You think they believe it? Do they believe it?
Well,
how can you believe this ridiculous nonsense?
May I explain to you how it is that a black as the AIDS person can be a white supremacist? It's because they've redefined words, just like they redefined vaccine to be a gene therapy. It wasn't. They redefined racism to be oppressor versus oppressed. And this is a Marxist doctrine. Marxist, actually, there's an Iranian woman now that Iran's under attack, let me bring up this wonderful journalist who's an Iranian. Her name is Azra Namani. She's also a Muslim from America. She fled to America. It was from her that I learnt this, that the Marxists, when they got to America, realized that they tried to peddle the class war and nobody gave a shit because it was the 1950s and everyone in America was prosperous and the working class just wanted to have a good job and have a house and have a family. So they weren't gaining traction. So they looked at the civil rights movement and they saw the injustice that Black Americans face, and they thought, well, what we'll do is we'll put the old wine in a new bottle and we'll repackage Marxism as a race war. And that's when they started a decades-long project to try to take over racism as Marxism. And that's what they're doing. So that's how a Black person can be a white supremacist, because, that's how you end up with Black Lives Matter. It's not racism, it's oppressor versus oppressed. And that's, and what they think is oppressor is basically anyone who opposes the left-wing agenda. And I might say that this is actually deeply threaded throughout Conspiracy Nation, which is why there's a neo-Nazi in every chapter shoehorned in where they don't belong half the time, because they're adhering to this idea that's come from a leftist milieu in Melbourne that includes anarcho-communist Andy Fleming, who is a fake name. So fake name Andy Fleming, his fake name friend Cam Smith, and those two have a radio show on 3CR on which these two have been on numerous times, together and separately. So they know each other. And they're also friends with a guy called Tom Tanauki, who I'm not sure that could be his real name. And Tom Tanauki, Cam Smith and Andy Fleming frame themselves as far-right researchers. But he's self-described communist. He's a anarcho-communist. So what these guys do is find a Nazi under every bed and then say everything is white supremacism. And so that milieu of the far left, along with those academics, this is who makes up the far left milieu in Melbourne. And so they're repeating these ideas and they're getting these ideas traction as mainstream ideas when they should actually be fringe. They're fringe ideas, but they're coming up through books like these into the mainstream of the ABC and the Guardian. And this is the problem, because you're all being reframed as racists and white supremacists. And let me tell you how sinister that is. There's a desperate need for more neo-Nazis so that we can frame you all, so we can demonize stuff we don't like, which what these guys hate is anybody who opposes mass migration. So they hate One Nation voters. They hate people who like Australian heritage and don't demonize it. They hate that because the British colonialist effort was where we got the Enlightenment principles from that guaranteed the rights of the individual. And they want to destroy the rights of the individual and have only the right of the collective because it's Marxist. This is the Marxist left-wing milieu that's invaded.
So that's your taxes at work. What about climate change? Are all climate change skeptics?
Just to go back to that, just before we go there, there's a poster now in Melbourne. I got sent a poster from Melbourne at a university that says to be white is to be evil. That's on the poster. Yeah. Sorry, John, climate change.
It's so toxic. It's actually very racist itself. Yeah. These are the new racists. The new racism is the opposite of the old racism. It's like Animal Farm. You couldn't make it up.
Yeah, that's
4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Yeah. 2 legs bad, 2 legs bad.
So these authors are funded by the taxpayer. They're purveyed through the University of Melbourne, arguably Australia's most left-wing university, all taxpayer funded. It's all and they're going through channels such as the ABC that are taxpayer funded. It's all courtesy of someone who's had to get up and go to work in a factory. It's just it's insane.
But it gets worse, John. It gets worse. And now here's where it gets particularly sinister. Oh, and another thing. Because you are all being reframed as racists and white supremacists, what these left-wing groups are doing, and this includes the New South Wales Council for Civil Liberties, there's another thing they're doing, where they've got another alliance. The left likes to ally itself with Islam. It's called the Red-Green Alliance. The red is the left, the green is Islam. Now, the left needs Islam for street muscle because Islam can immediately mobilise 5,000 men onto the streets of Sydney at the drop of a hat like that, as they did in Parry Park, Lakemba, straight after October 7th. They all filled Parry Park for a big show of dominance, a big show of force. everybody performative praying in Parry Park, Lakemba, to show these are our numbers, we can get them on the street. So the left love Islam for numbers. They want bolster from numbers. Islam loves the left because the left gives them the veneer of acceptability and the entryism into the culture, which it might not otherwise get, because the Sharia has quite a lot of things in it which are distasteful to, say, academic culture or media culture, such as treating women as second-class citizens, which it does, being extremely homophobic, which it is. You know, it couldn't get the accreditation, the access to being in the club, if you like, of the academia and the media without the left helping it. So the two sides need each other. So they work together. They've got an alliance, a red-green alliance. Not like a formal alliance on a piece of paper. They just recognise that they have the same goal and that they can be fellow travellers on the way to that same goal. So they ignore the bits of each other that they don't like and just focus on the stuff that they agree on, and then they move forward to that stuff. But the problem with this red-green alliance and you being reframed as racist is these groups such as New South Wales CCL are now going into parliamentary inquiries, making submissions to Parliament when there are inquiries on the far right or violence of terrorism in Australia, and they're going to these parliamentary inquiries and they are saying the real threat to Australia is not from Islam, it's from the far right racist white supremacists, which actually means all of you. And especially March for Australia. That's why the fake Nazis were sent into March for Australia, because they had to be demonised, because the thing they hate above all other things is opponents of mass migration. They're all Nazis. They're the number one. All must be Nazis and racist. Can't just oppose it as a policy. No. You're all racist.
So that's why Albanese came out and blamed right wing straight after Bondi.
Yes, because the people, the stuff you don't see is in these parliamentary inquiries, these civil service organisations, civil rights organisations that go in there and make these submissions, as do the Muslim organisations. So the Australian Muslims Advocacy Network, people like groups like that would go in and make these submissions saying, don't look at Islam, look at the far right, look at the far right. So if you want an explanation or at least an observation of a factor that could have helped explain why in 2019, the Akram father and son duo, the Islamist shooters of Bondi, one of them got a gun license while the other one was running around with Islamic State supporters in the Philippines. And ASIO flagged him. Why is it that ASIO isn't then just saying hands off? And the same year, 2019, the ASIO head came out in the media and said they're very concerned about the rise of the far right. Like, that's the talking point that they all have, because the pressure is being put on them by the political parties and by these lobbyists, so behind the scenes that you don't see. So now they're getting this pressure, this constant messaging to them that their job should be to look at you instead of Islamists, because you're racist if you look at Islamists. It's Islamophobic to look at Islamists. Stop paying attention to them. You're just being racist. And thus they are extra careful to be hands off, when in fact they needed to be paying more attention. We wouldn't have had a Bondi shooting if they had paid more attention to those two.
Well, that's another podcast altogether. Right. So we're running out of time for today. That's another podcast, which I thought we'd cover all that in this one, but we'll have to come back again. We'll have to come back again. So any final questions, Michael?
I'm always trying to get Alison on. I love Alison. Once it gives me an easy show, because I just sit here listening. I just love it. Yeah. I throw in a few funny little dad jokes here and there, but apart from that, I love it. It's here where we are. I think you're incredible. And the thing is, you have to be independent, because you can't have your voice in the system anymore. It's,
actually, I'd like to correct something about that. I didn't leave email on bad terms. I didn't. I mean, I don't know that I can't go back into the system one day. Maybe I could. But
actually, to show you that she's not a conspiracy theorist, I did an interview with the John. Alison believes the 9/11 happened exactly as it's taught to happen. Planes got abducted and flown into the building. So Alison believes that. So, there's a lot of people that don't.
Not a conspiracy theorist.
Try to bring up a conspiracy theorist who believes the narrative. So there you go. She's not.
It's interesting you should say, because I think this is an instructive case, to be honest. Because we all know that the Americans used the blob, the CIA, the Foreign policy blob and the military-industrial complex, they used that to ram through the Patriot Act, which they wanted.
Yeah, that's right.
But that doesn't mean they organised it. That just means they utilised it. They used it. Like they've got
Never
it
let a
sitting on
crisis
itself
go to
anyway.
waste.
Just like
Thereby
our government,
lies another quagmire.
just like our government used the Bondi shooting to ram through the hate speech censorship law.
All
Yeah,
right,
they
let's
had
have
to
another
go.
podcast on that
Yeah.
one. We'll have to come back on that one.
Thank you,
next week
Alison.
we've got Kim Williamson on. She's done all this
Oh,
great
so-
work in the Northern Territory and interviewing literally one of the last people to walk out from the desert. So
Really, the Pintupi, not the Pintupi.
yeah, that's Kim Williamson. She's been up there doing all sorts of work, and
Okay.
so that's great. So that'll be great. Look, Alison, thank you very much for coming on. There's so much more we could talk about. I can tell
Thanks
you.
for liking my book. I'm really moved
I
by
do like the
someone.
book.
No,
I
it's a
really
great
like
book.
it.
It's a really
Thanks.
interesting book and really an historically significant book. And I think it really shifts the needle on people's public perceptions, as does Letters from Australia. It's a great Substack, and we thoroughly recommend it. And it's
Absolutely.
been really thoughtful and
It's in the
really
show notes.
interesting and
Find the
very
link in the show
bolshie.
notes.
Very bolshie. I like the fact that it's right. You know,
Yeah.
right.
I feel like we're in some cafe somewhere in some sort of Greenwich Village or something, and you're just this chatting away, and we've just come in from the zombie land, and we're listening to, like, out of that film Reds, you know, not Reds. What was it? What was the one with Warren Beatty? Yeah, Reds. You know, where they remember that film where he went to Russia. You never seen Reds? See Reds. It's a beautiful
All
film.
right,
You
so-
remind me of the characters in that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so great. Thank you very much, Alison. Independent
worries,
media in
guys.
Australia is getting great figures these days, getting much better figures than much of the mainstream, and getting followers. Michael has followers, and Alison has followers that are the envy of any normal mainstream journalist. So it's great. Thank you.
And I'll send you this
the
too,
audience
so you
and
can upload it
thank
to
you,
your
Alison.
Substack, Alison.
Yes.
Thank you so
So,
much. You are very kind, both of you. I love it.
Oh, a huge supporter. You're an incredible
No.
voice. You have to be
Great.
supported. Yeah.
All right.
No
Thank you,
worries.
Alison.
Thank
all right.
you.
Take care,
See you
guys.
later.
See you
Thank you,
later,
bye.
guys. See you tonight with Liz Gunn. See ya.
Thanks,
Oh,
bye.
actually, is he gone?
Oh,
Maybe he has
Oh,
to
he's
go.
gone. Oh, he's gone.
Oh, let's keep talking. There's
Okay, let's. Oh, you know, if I ever get the chance to talk about this stuff, I will just go on for
Well, look,
hours.
I'm going to
You're right.
recommend. I've been wanting you to come on for a while. Why don't you pick a day that suits you, and we can do it. We can even do recordings, and I can put them up. I think this is the time to hear this stuff from you. You have
Yeah, maybe it is.
your intellect is amazing, and how you get it across, how you get this information across. It's, I don't know. It's you've got a gift. It's a really important gift, and I think it's really important now. People are so confused, and you have a way of cutting through the bullshit, you know?
You know, it's a lot easier to talk about these issues than it is to write about them. Writing about them takes
Yeah.
so long, and I get bogged down in the minutiae. And I'm a little bit
Yeah.
ADHD, so I interrupt. I'm a little bit autistic, maybe. I don't know. I interrupt
that's
and
cool.
miss social cues a lot, so people get angry at me. Or
Well, I don't. I think it's
So
cool.
you
I
don't?
think, no, I think you're amazing. I think you're amazing. I don't even care if I don't believe. I don't believe what you're saying. I don't care. It's just like hearing these ideas and going through, and you quantify it. You say, "This is what I think. This is it." So yeah, I think you're truly. I think you're one of our best journalists. So stay in touch. Have a think about it. Come on, we could probably make it financial. Get through your Substack. Get people flooding your Substack. You should Substack should be up at 10,000 followers, not 3,000. So yeah, happy to help. Happy to help. Pick a
Michael.
date.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Pick a
will.
date. I reckon you'd get a huge following. I
Okay.
really do. Yeah,
Alright.
simply because of your voice and your
Okay.
brain is this. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go now.
Oh, love
Take
you.
care.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you.
And have a
Thank you,
think
both
about
of
it
you.
seriously. Your important voice, you know. And times are changing now, because where we are now is we're in the place where people are waking up and going, it's all lies. It's really going,
Yeah.
and they're going, it's all lies. And we've got the evidence now that the evidence is going to keep coming out. And these intellectuals who might have all the money at the moment, it's going to start crumbling, because there'll be rats leaving a sinking ship. They're going to jump ship.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
sometimes so hard to understand how what things mean and how things really work. Like, it's so hard to understand when we're not privy to the inside information. But it does appear to me sometimes like the Trump administration is in an oligarch fight with the old guard, which is your Bill Gateses and your Obama administrations and your Clintons, and the Epstein one. So sometimes when you have two factions fighting, a little bit of freedom can come out of that. Like, I'm not saying that Trump is a freedom warrior or anything like that, or that Musk isn't related to the military. He is. But like, some things become clear that weren't clear before.
Talked about the Epstein files yet and the fallout.
I know.
And all these, so there's huge things happening. And the other thing, Carl Stefanovic has gone to doing podcasting, and he's got Rennick on this week, and he actually says to Rennick, "I apologize for being caught up by the con."
Wait, want to hear an Epstein file story? Like a brief, quick one? Your ears will fall off of this. You know, I told you how for the whooping cough vaccine, how Sydney Morning Herald was demonising adults who didn't take it as baby killers, and I wrote a Substack on it and complained to the Press Council. Well, like literally 3 days after, in my Substack inbox, I get a message from a Sydney Morning Herald reporter, who shall remain nameless because I don't think it came from him. I think somebody told him to do it, in which somehow he had found me in the Epstein files. Holy fuck!
Oh, you?
Yes. You know why? Because I beat. Remember, John was mentioning that long time ago when I beat Hisbet Tahrir in the court case, and then at that time when I was a tribunal case, I beat Hisbet Tahrir for sending me to the back of the room for being female. At that time, Tim Blair from the Daily Telegraph set up like a GoFundMe, crowdfunded, buy her a beer, and I got something like 10 grand or 13 grand or something like that. I forget what it is now. But all of it I gave to charity, and I broke it up to different charities, and I tried to pick all the charities that the Islamists would hate the worst. So I gave it to Richard Dawkins' Foundation for Reason and Science, Lawrence Krauss's Origins Project, Malala Yousafzai, who was funding girls to get education. I think I gave something to the Kurds who were fighting Islamic State. You know, I gave it to everyone who the Islamists hate the worst. And Lawrence Krauss and Richard Dawkins let me go. They ran a little holiday tour that went up to Machu Picchu, and they let me go on it. I had to pay, of course, like standard price like everyone else, but it's just a very select few people get to go on it. I got to go up Machu Picchu with Lawrence Krauss and Richard Dawkins. And so I was in communication with Lawrence Krauss, and then he asked some advice because some woman in Australia had accused him of something improprietous, and it sounded like he was pretty innocent. And he asked for advice of whether he should sue that woman for defamation. And so I emailed back, well, look, this is this and this is that, and if you want to sue him, this is the defamation lawyers you go. I would recommend not suing her because, you know, who knows, she could be, never go after little people, don't hurt them. Like, it's the media organisations who shouldn't have published it, who should have checked their facts first.
Just keep talking for a second. Sorry. Just keep talking for a second.
Sure. And so what happened was I did not know, but Lawrence knew, Jeffrey Epstein. Because obviously Jeffrey Epstein was courting all the scientific elite. So, and it doesn't mean that he's to blame for anything either. It's just that Jeffrey Epstein ran around all the university professors and tried to make friends with them all. So they didn't necessarily know that anything bad was going on. But he thought that Epstein was a good, obviously must have thought Epstein was a good expert on legal matters, or was trying to talk to everyone he knew to work out what to do. So he had forwarded my email onto him. So anyway, now you know the background. 3 days after I hassle Sydney Morning Herald about their awful demonisation of unvaxxed people as baby killers, 3 days later, I get a message in my Substack inbox from a Sydney Morning Herald reporter saying he had found, he wanted to know if I was Alison B from Australia, because that's all you could see on this forwarded email was Alison B, that you would have no way to know it was me unless somebody told you. So there's no way this guy from the Sydney Morning Herald could have known that that was even me. I mean, I didn't know I was in there. I didn't even know that existed. No one would have known. I used the search function of the Epstein files. It couldn't be found on the search function. It was a PDF. So you couldn't find it. The only way the Sydney Morning Herald reporter could have found this thing is if they'd done some fairly extensive Oppo research on me, probably not even the Sydney Morning Herald. Probably someone else has rung them up and said, oh, this journo, you know, wanting to somehow smear me or silence me or shut me up or reputation threaten me, because obviously if I come up in the Epstein files, I must be a bad pedophile approver or something of that
Baby
nature.
eater.
Yeah, exactly. So 3 days after, I got this message saying, "Is this you in the Epstein files?" Which brings me to another point of another function the Epstein files being wholesale dumped on the internet can now serve. It's now a way for people to be threatened no matter how obliquely they appear in those files. They're a smear
Yeah,
trap.
you're in the files.
Just like the fake Nazis are a smear trap. This is another smear trap. Oh,
Yeah.
you were in the Epstein files. You must be one of them.
You must have eaten babies. That's what I say when they're supposed to be. Because I've got a lot of questions about the Epstein files. You're watching Ellen DeGeneres. I've been saying this a bit, and they're saying she was the biggest baby killer, biggest cannibal, because she wants the adrenochrome. Well, it's not working because she doesn't look young and pretty. She just looks like an old, worn-out lesbian. I'm sorry, it's not working. She must be eating the wrong babies. And so there's a lot of weird stuff going on. But I got to go now because I'm over here in Perth with my parents and stuff like this. But I'll tell you something very funny. My parents were talking last night. They're in their 80s and they're really with it. But they said something about woke, and Mum said, "What's woke?" And Dad said, and Dad said, I said, "Google it." And Dad said, "I did Google it, but I couldn't understand what I was reading." But I'll tell you something funny. This is just to show whether this is a story about my dad it's my funniest. Mom doesn't like being on the phone, but everything's in her name. So if he gets the emergency, and he's got a voice like Richard Burton, and because he's Welsh, so if he gets on the phone, they go, "I'm sorry, sir, we must speak to Florence Ann Griffith, who is the name on the account," and he goes, "I am Florence Ann Griffith. I'm transgender." And he says they go silent for about 10 seconds. They go, "Okay, Florence, let's." And Mum's sitting on the couch watching quiz shows. I'm going to go. Take care. Look, really seriously think about it. I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm a massive fan of your brain and the way you deliver what you do. So please, seriously think about it. I've been hammering you for ages, but please. I think times are changing now. It's everything. Karl Stefanovic coming out and saying it was a con. That's just going to allow a lot. It's like Iran. There's going to be a load of Australians going, "Yes, I think that too." He's going to give them permission to shake off the shackles of fear. So it's going to be huge in Australia now.
That's it, the permission to shake it off. They just need the permission. Yeah.
And that's what Karl's giving them.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind.
No, take care. Bye. See ya. A lucky country.
When I met Jesus Christ, he was almost 10 years old, and he was helping his mother push a trolley full of all they owned. And because they couldn't find an inn they could get in, they were heading to the city and leaving Bethlehem. "Couldn't you perform a miracle? I'm out of them," he said. "I tried turning nothing into warmth, but it just made my mother cry. It just made my mother cry." Mary Magdalene has become a man, and tonight he's old, and she has been riding my tram. Now it's late and she's trying to sleep, to who?